Hi there, Vibe Gardeners. Welcome to another episode of Vibe Gardening Informal Edition, where I'm going to talk about how I'm experimenting with my peppers this year in 2026. With that said, here we go. Alright, guys, so last year, if you remember with me planting peppers, last year I started out with a bunch of California Wonder sweet bell peppers with my tomato plants last year, as well as having a New Mexican hatch pepper in my front yard. This year, I've had a completely different strategy in that I'm also taking a experiment with both growing it and also coming up with a way of taste testing the hot peppers because I've basically walked away from my New Mexican hot peppers, hatch peppers, basically being able to play with more varieties. So this year, as you can see, I have myself in the front, the purple stuff. This is my Buena Mulata, and this one right here with the curl, this is my Anaheim pepper, and I still have my California Wonder here. And so in this episode, I'm going to go over my growing experiment with pots, as well as how I'm going to basically test these two peppers on how to use in my culinary purposes. With that said, here we go. So I guess before we start, we're going to go a little bit of a recap of last year in 2025, what happened and kind of what's different this year. One of the main things that happened last year was the heat wave came at the most inopportune time when the peppers, at least for the bell peppers, they're starting to set fruit and they're having flowers. And the heat wave came and forced the flowers and the fruits to drop when time came. This year, the heat wave still came, but the good news was that the heat wave came a little later than last year, and just enough for the fruit to have already set on the flowers, so that the flowers didn't drop, the fruit didn't drop, everything was still growing. So already right now in the we're kind of coming up in the middle of July here, on July 10th today, and already we're seeing that we have a massive, two massive fruits on my potted bell pepper, and I got a bunch of other ones coming up in my in-ground peppers as well. So things are going tremendously well, and also the fact that I'm keeping these hot peppers in controlled smaller pots, basically forcing them to fruit earlier and being able to have a lot more fruit on these hot peppers than I did with my New Mexican hatch pepper last year. So overall, I'm getting a lot better production, and so a lot of it was basically aided by weather. But of course, with these hot peppers, weather really wasn't a big deal because last year the New Mexican hatch peppers didn't even get phased by the different weather. And so that's basically like the setup of the weather this year. So another thing I kind of want to go into is why did I start putting a lot of these things in pots? So one of the things that happened was I noticed last year at the end of the season, the New Mexican hatch pepper, they couldn't quite survive the winter. Obviously, they couldn't. It's below their zone. So I had to start over and had a tremendous difficulty starting over. But also, I remember seeing a lot of YouTube videos out there from, like, for example, um, Gardening Canada or MI Gardener or even James Prori. These people all talk about how they're able to save peppers for the next year. And I thought to myself, why start over when I can essentially give myself a chance to really have the same stuff, right? Because I think the hatch peppers last year was a prime example where I looked at my fruit and I really enjoyed it, and I want to continue that same plant over many years. So this year, what ended up started happening was I put these guys, so the Anaheim pepper and the Buena Mulata, I put these guys in pots, thinking, instead, because I don't really have a cold enough to hibernate, but not warm enough to not kill them type of location in my house. In that my garage actually drops below freezing, and I don't think these guys will survive the winter if I used those techniques from those videos, which I'll link a few of them below. And essentially, what it comes down to a lot of them is basically clipping off the leaves, trimming down the branches, digging them up with a root, basically cover them up, and then putting it in a pretty cold temperature, but not below freezing, to basically promote those plants to go into hibernation. So since I don't have that kind of environment, what I'm going to do is I want to keep things in pots. And that way, in the winter comes, I can bring indoors and try to basically put them in slower growth indoors in the winter. And then when the weather becomes warmer, I'm going to harden them to bring them outdoors again. And that way, continuing the cultivar. Of course, I believe I also have enough room in the house to be able to do that. Though the Anaheim pepper, from the expected size of it, might challenge that a little bit. So if it doesn't work out, I might have to essentially start over with something smaller. I'm not sure, or I'm going to have to basically start over with Anaheim again if I really like Anaheim. So that's the reason for me on going into pots. But the one thing that I did not expect was what I'm going to show next with growth. So one of the things I did not expect by putting these peppers in the pot, as you can see, this one is already outgrowing it significantly. I believe down here I don't have the clear plastic, but I believe this thing's already like probably more than 2/3 root mass. Not much soil left. But check out the size of this fruit here. It's already basically the size of my hand. It's kind of hard for me to show, but like my hand basically comes down and it's basically my whole entire hand. This thing's massive, and I'm already only in the middle of July, which is quite early for this thing to be this big. And I have also had another one. I've already harvested another pepper in here, and this one, I think because of the damage here, who knows what, I'll harvest this early to get the most of the edible stuff out of this. This thing is fruiting like crazy right now. And same thing with all these other ones here. With Anaheim, as you can see, it is also showing that it's actually not as root bound as the other ones, but this is actually already showing some good fruit here. But really here, I think the one that's really kind of showing off here is the Buena Mulata. Look at how much fruit this thing has. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's got 12 fruit already sitting here, and we're already only in the middle of July. Having 12 fruit, I think that's already doing pretty well. We're going to have a lot of peppers. Actually, I harvested 2 already. So we're talking about 14 peppers already. And we're doing very well here. Alright, to give you guys a perspective of what's going on here, you see that potted pepper that I was showing you earlier against the peppers in ground over here? You see the size difference? Let's do a measurable here. So if I put my measuring tape here, my tape measure here, we'll see that it's about 3 foot tall, or 36 to 37 inches tall, the one in ground. But if I measure this guy down here, yep, we're pretty much only about 14 inches. So that right there is close to a 3-fold height difference between the potted one and the one in ground. But the cool thing here is that just because of the height difference, we're seeing that the fruiting is not quite anywhere near where they are. This is the most advanced one, as you can see here. These are quite a bit smaller. These are about half the size of my hand, and there's 2 of them. And even though it's about 3 times the size, the fruit itself is coming later. And that what it does is that it gives me a 2-sided season here, in that I get some pepper in the beginning of the season with my potted peppers, but the maximum yield is not very high because it's 1/3 the size of these in ground. But what happens is that in ground one, once the season really gets going, I'm guessing August to September, I'm going to have significantly more fruit yield from these pepper in ground. So what's going to end up happening is that it's these guys here will absolutely outproduce in the end. But early season, I can get some produce coming out of the ones in the pot. And the other thing here, just because I showed you guys the size difference between the potted bell pepper and the in-ground bell pepper, I do have to also acknowledge the challenges of keeping a bell pepper in a pot as big as this one. It's not very big. I think this one's probably only about 8 inches, 8 to 10 inches wide. And one of the challenges of having a potted bell pepper that is about 80% or so, I'm guessing it's anywhere from 2/3 to 80% root mass in here, is that needs to be watered significantly heavy. So at this current moment right now, I have to water at least once a day. I can probably get away with 1.5, 2 days, maybe in between watering cycle, but it takes a lot of water to keep this thing fed well. And the other thing too is I need to also I do fertilize it half strength Miracle Grow with a tiny bit of the tomato blend once every week or so, maybe even less. But it does give it some nutrition here to keep it going. That's why things are growing so fast. And the leaves are very dark green, extremely healthy, and they're thick and durable. So obviously it's working, but it definitely takes work. It takes daily monitoring to make sure that it's fed enough, which means if I go on vacation, come back after a week, not sure if it's going to make it. All right, so the final thing that I'm going to go over here is going to talk a little bit about how to actually test the peppers and how they taste. So the main thing here is, as you guys saw, that I have a bunch of Roma tomato, as well as again these peppers here. So basically, I'm going to put them together into my Ninja blender, and I'm going to actually use a little vinegar to grind it and come up with what I think is actually going to be a nice little taste test. And already what I've noticed is that with these Anaheim peppers is that it's quite weak. So actually this one I'm trying to keep it here on the stem as long as possible to see if I can make this more ripe and get more heat out of it. But it's so weak that it's kind of like a nice little flavor. And I would say it's on the mild side, but you can still taste the pepper. And today I'm going to try the Buena Mulata. So I'm going to show you guys how I put that together. All right, here we are. Got some nice Roma tomatoes that we can pick from. Here we go. All right, guys, here we are with our ingredients. It's very simple. Let's take these Roma tomato. I'm using about 5 of them because I kind of want to see how actually spicy these things are. The first time using Buena Mulata. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to use only salt and vinegar. And the reason is that I usually use garlic as well with it, but I kind of want to just taste the raw flavor of this Buena Mulata. So basically what I'm going to do is this tomato, because the shape of it is already quite good for blending, I'm basically just going to put them all in here, like this. And I'm going to keep it extremely simple. Take the peppers and just cut off the tip of it. See inside it's got nice little white seeds. I'm going to just dump it in here. And probably shouldn't put on gloves before putting it on, so I have no idea how powerful these are. I'm going to dump, I guess, a random amount of salt in here because I really don't quite know what's going to happen. I can always add more later, right? And then I'm going to add some vinegar here just to make sure there's some base to it. I think that's going to be good enough right now. Then put on the blades. And right here, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick, it's defaulting to puree. I think it's just good enough. So let's see what happens here. All right, guys. So now you see how I kind of make that sauce, and moment of truth. When I opened this container and I sniffed it, and yeah, I was almost coughing. So I think it's going to be kind of spicy. Okay. Yes, this is going to be hot sauce. I'm going to put my smoked chicken. Ooh, yeah. Buena Mulata definitely packs a punch. Yes, it's quite spicy. So this is how I test it. I put 2 of them in there. Next time, I think for 5 Roma tomatoes, I can probably put in just 1 pepper and I'll be just fine. 2 of them, yeah, this is gonna if you visit my house and you want some hot sauce, I got your fix right here, guys. So now you know how I test my growing method for peppers, as well as how I'm basically scorched myself on camera with this hot sauce. Until next time, keep gardening and keep vibing. Let's go. Whew.